Hi everybody, welcome to another episode of Historia Politica Publica. This is the series about Noam Chomsky and his book on anarchism. In the first episode of this series, I spoke about Noam Chomsky, his political involvement, his writings, his career as a linguistic, as a historian, as a philosopher, some of his influence, how he has changed the world in different aspects in the analytical philosophy sphere, but also how he has always been committed since he was literally 9 years old when he wrote the first text ever, which was about the Spanish Revolution in Spain, 1936-1937, and how he was impressed by the role of the CNT and the anarcho-syndicalist movement in Barcelona to defeat the coup d'etat of Franco, and he was just 9 years old at that time. So now I wanted to analyze the first chapter of his book on anarchism. It is divided in 5 chapters and all of them are very interesting. You have notes on anarchism, which is the first one, and I will talk about it. The second is some excerpts from Understanding Power, which is another of his book, in which he speaks about Adam Smith, the welfare state, the concept of anarchism and libertarianism, and some examples of anarcho-syndicalism. The third, he speaks about objectivity and liberal scholarship and how the media and some people in academia has tergiversed the history and have used different figures in order for their own benefits. The example of Adam Smith is clear. Adam Smith is considered as the father of neoliberalism, in spite that in his text, The Wealth of Nations, and also under the moral sentiments, he mentioned how it is important to redistribute the wealth among the different societies. The fourth is an interview with Harry Kreisler from Political Awakeness, and I will speak about that one other time because it exposed the life of Noam Chomsky, how he learned about anarchism from his uncle, which he always points as one of his references when he was young. His uncle did not have formal education, and yet he was really aware of what was happening around the world. And Chomsky points how in Britain or UK, United States, it has traditionally been the working class who has been more enlightened than the upper classes, and he uses the example that, for example, in Britain, where the upper classes were using their time playing golf, like going in Oxford to do some parties, the working class was always trying to learn about what was happening around them, and for that reason, the text like the Communist Manifesto, which is written in a kind of language comprehensible for almost everybody by Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels, published in 1848, was essential. And also the anarchist texts that have always tried to help the people to comprehend the society in which they are living. And the fifth episode is about language and freedom. It is related with his work in MIT and the progress and breathtaking advances that he has achieved in this field. So going to the first episode, which is called Notes on Anarchism, this is overall a kind of a reference for the anarchism, using quotes from people like Bakunin, Kropotkin, Rudolf Rocker, which was an anarchist historian, also Daniel Guerin, which wrote a book in 1970, I think, which is called Anarchy from Theory to Practice, in which it's an analysis of the anarchist movement through history. So, in one of those first quotes that he puts, it is related with this anarchist historian, Rudolf Rocker, and he says the same, quote, "For the anarchists, freedom is not an abstract philosophical concept, but the vital concrete possibility for every human being to bring to full development all the powers, capacities, and talents with which nature has endowed him or her, and turn them to social account." End quote. In other words, anarchism must serve people to strive through a better world, learning about what is happening, reading, but also engaging with different communities in order to put this theory on practice, and also learn through conversation from different people. This has been very common in different anarchist movements through history, such as in Catalonia between 1936 and 1937 with the CNT members, the Confederación Nacional del Trabajo, the anarcho-syndicalist, the anarcho-syndicate. Also, you have the Magno in Ukraine in 1920. You have the Paris Commune, which can be considered as anarchist, although it just lasts 2 months because it was crushed by the government, the force of the French state led by Thiers. Another movement that has been happening across the world since then, we can even maybe refer the Zapatistas in Mexico as a kind of anarchist movement, because they share everything they have, they create an egalitarian system, an horizontal approach to the different demands, and also giving importance to the individual that can learn by himself or herself and put this knowledge in the service of the community. So it is not creating a kind of homogeneous whole in which everybody must think in the same way, but rather giving a lot of importance, huge relevance to the individual in order that this person can help the community. And at the same time, this person will learn through the engagement with the whole community. So, speaking about the Spanish Revolution, which is the concept that in the Anglo-Saxon literature is commonly referred for the action that happened in Catalonia since the 19th of July of 1936, the day after the coup d'etat of Francisco Franco, in which the people uprise against the fascist army, they repel them, and they were able to control the city. And there is one quote of Jewish companions that was killed by Franco's armies, in which he had a meeting with some anarchist member of the CNT, and he said them like they had the real power of the city, they were able to do whatever they want, and he offered himself to resign as the leader of Barcelona and say, listen, I put myself in your service, do whatever you want, you have deserved to be in charge because you have defeated Francoism for the time being, and I will follow your orders in that way. So Diego Abad de Santillán, which was a historian of that time in Spain, he said this thing about what was happening in the country. In facing the problem of social transformation, the revolution cannot consider the state as a medium, but must depend on the organization of producers. The suppression of the state cannot be a languid affair. It must be the task of the revolution to finish with the state. End quote. This is very important because it is the difference that kind of distinguishes Marxism. It was created and anarchism. And I am talking now about the 1860s, when you have the International of Workers, the first international as was known later. You had Marx and Bakunin. Marx, let's say, the father of communism, and Bakunin, not the father of anarchism, because we can attribute that role to Proudhon, Pierre Proudhon maybe, but Bakunin was basically his heir. And both of them has this argument in which Marx, basically he said that the working class need to take the power of the state, and once they are in the state, they need to change everything, give the means of production to the workers, and later on we will create a society without a state, which will be completely egalitarian. With Bakunin said, no, we need to smash the state before somebody of us can enter there, because even the most benevolent, the most altruist people will be corrupted by the influence of the state. So that was literally the reason why the anarchists and the communists, or they were called socialists at that time, they broke apart, and whereas the red and black flag, it was cut in half, giving the red color to the socialist communists and the black color to the anarchists. Interestingly, in Les Miserables, there is a song which is called The Red and the Black, in which in the Cafe ABC, the leaders of the revolution, the students and the workers, sing this song comparing the red and the black, and it is a clear reference that Victor Hugo did for this movement that at that time was together, and in the recent version it has been extrapolated towards nowadays. So, going back to the suppression of the state, it was clear how the communists, Marxists, socialists, and the anarchists had a big fight among that. For instance, Friedrich Engels, which was the long-life friend of Marx, wrote in a letter of 1883 this: "To destroy the state at such a moment would be to destroy the only organism by means of which the victorious proletariat can assert its newly conquered power, hold down its capitalist adversaries, and carry out that economic revolution of society." End quote. Going through this line that the state cannot be smashed yet, but it will happen later on. And in the Spanish Revolution, there in the book of Blood of Spain, oral history written by Ronald Fraser about the Spanish Civil War, there are many testimonies of anarchists and communists which they say basically our main difference was that whereas the communists wanted to first win the war against Franco, Germany and Italy, and then make the revolution, the anarchists wanted the same but in the opposite way, doing the revolution in order to win the war. So in that sense, Bakunin, which as I mentioned earlier was the leader of the anarchist movement, or at least the most prominent figures, because the anarchists do not have a leader in the kind of mean that we understand now, or they have leader but people that has been elected by the people in a kind of direct democratic way. He warns of the dangers of the, quote, red bureaucracy, which will prove to be, quote, the most vile and terrible lie that our century has created. It is interesting because he said that in 1860s, and we saw how the Soviet Union 70 years later will become corrupt in that way with Stalin and all his allies, destroying the reminiscence of what was accomplished by the Bolshevik in the Russian Revolution of 1917, creating the most egalitarian ever society for women, giving the woman a huge amount of right that like the right to abortion, to divorce, the right to not work when they are having a child, rights that even in modern societies they are not accomplished, such as the abortion in the United States, which was abolished. The right to abortion was abolished in some states last summer. So the thing is, Bakunin was warning about that, but it was not just him. Also Enrico Malatesta, another anarchist, I think it was in 1915. He was concerned about what would happen if workers took the state power and just kept there. And also Emma Goldman, who traveled to the Soviet Union, wrote later on how she was highly dissatisfied by the development of the Soviet Union under the Stalin regime. Then, going back to Bakunin again, for Bakunin, the liberty, which is the main characteristic of the anarchism, is he defines liberty with the following sentence, quote, "Liberty consists in the full development of all material, intellectual, and moral powers that are latent in each person," end quote. This is one of the fundamental aspects of anarchism. It is the real liberty to proceed doing the things that you like most, to help the society in the way that you can do. Let's say that you are very good at constructing or like teaching. So these kind of roles must be done in the benefit of everybody, and at the same time it has bring you satisfaction, and it have to help you to grow as a person. And most important, you do not have to do that under coercion or under wage labor, because the system of wage means that if you do not do that, you will starve and you will die, because you won't have money to buy food, to shelter yourself, and so on. So this pressure that is inherent in capitalism is something that the anarchists want to abolish once for all. And it is interesting, the book of The Dispossessed of Ursula K. Le Guin, who mentioned that anarchism for her is the most interesting ideology, in which precisely in the planet of Anarres there is an anarchist society in which people are working like 3 hours, 4 hours per day, the most kind of dangerous jobs like going to the mining, or the most physically tiring like cleaning the streets, are done by everybody, but let's say there is a kind of draw and one person just need to do it for 3 hours every 2 months, something like that, like kind of redistributing the labor. So going back to the book of to the chapter of notes on anarchism by Noam Chomsky, he points how Rudolf Rocker, the anarchist historian, mentioned that anarchism is the confluence of socialism and liberalism, and Noam Chomsky wrote that, quote, "Libertarian socialism is the inheritor of the liberal ideas of the Enlightenment." And this is one of the main contributions I think that Chomsky does to the contemporary philosophical theory, because he has read widely Adam Smith, John Stuart Mill, Humboldt, Kant, or Rousseau. Especially Humboldt, Adam Smith, and John Stuart Mill are taken by the so-called liberals, but for Chomsky, who had read widely about them, he points how these authors precisely mention that the kind of freedom must be attained against the state, against capitalism. It must be created a society which is completely egalitarian in order to make people pursue their own interests, which will align with the common one in the future. In that sense, for Chomsky and the anarchist, freedom is a precondition for acquiring the maturity for freedom, not a gift to be granted when such maturity is achieved. So the freedom cannot be given to you by anybody else, but it is a process, an organic dialectical interaction with other people and within society, in which will help you to develop the concept of freedom. Through the process of becoming free, you will realize how great it is to have liberty, to pursue your goals and help the society, and this will be the key for freedom. And as Rudolf Rocker said, quote, "Socialism will be free or it will not be at all." And this is a criticism of state socialism, which is the implementation by Stalinism in the Soviet Union, the idea that, okay, we are equal, but at the same time the state will control everything. And people like Bertrand Russell, Noam Chomsky, Walter Lippmann, and many others, and the anarchists have widely criticized, because at the end they point how if we want to suppress the bourgeois dominion by a working class dominion, at the end it will be the same kind of a master, and the idea is to create an horizontal system to have equality, real equality among people. In fact, just to finish this episode, and I will continue later, I was listening to an interview the other day of Noam Chomsky, and he was asked why people believe that socialism can be authoritarian, and he replied, well, it is depending which kind of socialism you mean. If you mean state socialism, yes, that is authoritarian. But if you speak about socialism in the epistemological term in which was created, and that it is basically an analogy of anarchism, socialism is completely, its values are freedom, are liberty, are egalitarianism, are common aid, mutual aid, and so on. So he defines state socialism as kind of authoritarian socialism, whereas socialism, it is for him the anarchist socialism, libertarian socialism. And I finish here the episode. I will continue talking about this episode because it is great and there are a lot of insights important, I think, to talk about them.